أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وإيمانا وفقها في الدين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وتجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا يا رب العالمين. So there's another introduction to our book Al-Matn al-Ashmawiyya by Imam Sheikh Abdul Bari al-Ashmawi. So we started with the introduction to fiqh, definition of fiqh and the scope of fiqh, and then how fiqh emerged from the time of the Prophet to the time of Sahaba and to the time of Tabi'in till the time of the four well-known madhabs. So now, today we will look at the life of Imam Malik, since we are the book, the masterpiece, Matn al-Ashmawi. Matn al-Ashmawiyya is based on the fiqh of Imam Malik. Okay, so we will look at the life of Imam Malik, and also look at the sources of the madhab. Okay. Now, how do we arrange the four madhabs before we start with Imam Malik? How do we arrange? Because chronologically there's arrangement of these four madhabs, right? Who can tell me? How do we arrange this chronologically? How is it arranged?
So I think based on the time.
Based on
their time.
Which time?
Maybe Imam Malik comes like, so it will be like based on the time they were, or maybe.
Alright, so it's based on the death date or death year of the Imams, right? So we have Mazhab al-Hanafiya, right? Right? The founder is Imam Abu Hanifa, right? Nu'man bin Thabit. And then we also have Madhab Malikiya. The founder is Imam Malik bin Anas, the figure that we'll be discussing today. And also we have Madhab al-Shafi'iyya. That's the founder is Imam Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i. And then we also have Madhab Hanbaliya. The founder is Imam Ahmad bin Muhammad bin Hanbal. Yeah, so Ibn Hanbal is his grandfather. His father is Muhammad. So now, the chronological arrangement of this madhab is Madhab Hanafiya. The founder is Imam Abu Hanifa, who died in the year 150.
150?
Yeah, 50. And then Madhab Malikiya, our madhab. The founder is Imam Malik, who died in the year 179. And then we have Madhabu al-Shafi'iyya. The founder is Imam Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, who died in the year 205. Okay, and Imam Ahmad bin Muhammad bin Hanbal, who died in the year 241. So you can see Imam Abu Hanifa, then Imam Malik, then Imam Shafi'i, then Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. So that's the chronological arrangement of the madhabs. Madhab Hanafiya, Malikiya, and Shafi'iyya, and then Hanbaliya. Okay, so now, since the masterpiece is based on the fiqh of Imam Malik, let's get to know who Imam Malik is. Okay, Imam Malik, his name is, his kunya is Abu Abdullah. His name is Malik. His father's name is Anas, and his grandfather's name is Malik bin Abi Amir. Malik bin Abi Amir. Amir, yeah. So his name is Malik. His father's name is Anas. So it's Malik bin Anas bin Malik bin Abi Amir. So his grandfather is what? Malik bin Abi Amir. His father is Anas, and then his name is Malik. So Malik bin Anas bin Malik bin Abi Amir.
Malik bin Anas bin Malik
Bin Abi Amir. Okay, so that's his name, and then his kunya is Abu Abdullah. So his grandfather Malik bin Abi Amir, he's among the tabi'in. You remember we discussed about Sahaba and then the tabi'in. Who did we say a tabi'in is?
Someone who came to witness and believe. Or even from the Sahaba.
Someone who is a tabi'in?
A tabi'in is someone who came, like who witnessed the time of the Sahaba.
The time of the Sahaba.
Maybe,
Yeah. So a tabi'i is someone who has seen what? A Sahabi, and then has believed, and then was a Muslim, and then died as a Muslim. So this is a tabi'i. So here, Imam Malik's grandfather was among the tabi'in, right? Meaning he has what? He has seen some sahabas, right? So among the sahabas he saw was Umar bin Khattab, Abu Huraira, and also Uthman bin Affan. Yeah, so the grandfather of Imam Malik has seen what? Numerous sahabas, right? And then he has also narrated from them, and he's a renowned scholar of hadith in his time. Okay, so Imam Malik, and then also his father, Imam Malik's father, his name is?
Abu Amir.
No.
Abdullah.
No. Anas, yeah. So his father's name is what? Anas. Okay. So this Anas, Malik's father, studied from what? From his father, Malik bin Abi Amir, right? Who narrated from what? From Umar bin Khattab and Abu Huraira and also Uthman bin Affan. So Imam Malik was born in the year 93. Okay. He was born in the year 93 after the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay, so he was born in the year, in the same year, there was a companion of the Prophet who died in the same year. His name is Anas bin Malik. Yeah, his name is...
Servant.
Yeah, the servant of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, Anas bin Malik, he was the servant of the Prophet. He served the Prophet for 10 good years. Right? So he died in what? In the same year. Yeah, in the year 93. So in the same year, Imam Malik was born. So you find such things, and then in Islamic history, you find a year that a great scholar will die, and then another scholar will be born. Right? So like Imam Abu Hanifa, when did we say he died?
Abu Hanifa died in the year...
in the year 150.
150.
Yeah, he died in the year 150. So in the same year, a great scholar was born. That's Imam Shafi'i, the founder of the third madhab Shafi'iyya. So he was also born in the year 150. Right? Okay. Yeah. So like that, you find a lot of Sahabas, especially the Tabi'un, right? You find a scholar who will just pass on. Then another scholar will be born either in the same month or in the same year.
Do they happen to all the madhabs?
No. Imam Ibn Hanbal, no. Yeah, so Imam Malik was born in the year 93, and he was born in Medina. And then he started seeking knowledge in Medina. So he was from a noble family, a family of scholars, right? Because his grandfather was a scholar. His father too narrated from his father, okay, from his grandfather. And then his brother he had a brother called Nadr. And then he also has an uncle called Abu Suhail. So all these were scholars.
Wow.
Yeah, they were scholars in Medina. So Imam Malik was what? From a noble family of knowledge. Okay, so his mother is Aliya bint Sharik. Aliya bint Sharik. So his mother was a very pious woman. Okay, was a very pious woman, and she loved knowledge. So she encouraged her son, and then she played a very pivotal role in the success of Imam Malik. So after Imam Malik finished the memorization of the Quran, he expressed his interest in hadith. He wanted to narrate hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So at that time, before a student to start seeking any other knowledge, he has to first memorize the Quran. Right? So Imam Malik memorized the Quran and then started learning hadith. So when he expressed his interest in hadith memorization and hadith seeking the knowledge of hadith, she dressed him as a scholar, right? She dressed him. So at that time, scholars have a way of dressing. I mean, they have a style of dressing, okay, with their turban, with their cap and all that. So she dressed him in that fashion and then she said to him, go to Rabi'a, that's one of the teachers of Imam Malik. She said, go to Rabi'a and learn from his character and learn from his conduct before you start learning knowledge from him, before you start recording or reporting hadith from him. So she asked him to go and learn manners and good conduct of the teacher. That's Rabi'at al-Ra'i. Rabi'at al-Ra'i was one of the teachers of Imam Malik and one of the jurists of Medina, right? So that's what she told him. So she played a very pivotal role in his life, okay? She encouraged him, she supported him, right? So as you can see, she told him to go and learn from the conduct and the character of the teacher before he started learning knowledge from the teacher. So now, why did she ask him to go and learn the character and the conduct of the teacher before he started learning the knowledge? Yeah. So I mean, character and conduct is really important, especially when it comes to scholarship. A scholar without manners, a scholar without good conduct is just zero. Yeah. Okay. So that's why you find nowadays people we call scholars will come and then be saying things that it's not good. So, and then also look at the role that the mother of Imam Malik played. And then also the same thing happened to Imam Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i, his father died when he was young. And Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal too, the same thing. Their mothers played a very key role in their success. Yeah, so that's Imam Malik. Okay, she encouraged him, she dressed him as a scholar, and then encouraged him to go and learn the character and the conduct of the teacher before he started learning his knowledge. So also Imam Shafi'i's mother also played a pivotal role, key role in his success as a scholar. So his father died when he was young. So his mother took him, she took care of him. They were in Gaza, so she migrated to her family in Mecca for him to be able to study from the scholars of Mecca. So he studied in Mecca for some time and then migrated or traveled to Medina to meet Imam Malik. That's Imam Shafi'i. Okay, so his mother also played a key role in his success. Same as Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He's also one of the founders of the Mazhab. His mother played a crucial role in his success as a scholar. So you can see these three Imams, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, their mothers play a key role in their success. And then they were all pious women, right? Yeah. So this is also a clear indication that their fathers, the fathers of what these three scholars, what chose what good mother for what for their for their children, right? Yeah. So they choose what a pious woman, a religious woman. So they supported their children, their words towards what towards that area, okay, towards that direction, and then they became those we know today. Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad. Okay, so it's also before. I mean, now you are yet to get married, so this, so yeah. So I mean, be careful who you choose as what, whom you choose as a what, as a wife, right? Because it's one of the contribution that you can do to what to your children, to choose a good mother, a God-fearing and a religious woman for what for your children. So that's it. So, and then he started seeking knowledge from Medina, and then Imam Malik, among these four Imams, he is the only Imam who has never left Medina to a different city to seek knowledge. Yeah, so he seek knowledge. He started in Medina and then became a scholar in Medina without, leaving Medina, without traveling outside Medina. But the scholars of his time, you find all of them have left their cities to different cities to learn and then report hadith from different scholars. But Imam Malik started his scholarship. He started his studies in Medina, and then became a qualified jurist in Medina without traveling outside Medina. Why? Because in Medina was populated by jurists and then great scholars at that time. Okay, so he didn't find the need to travel outside Medina to study. But Imam Shafi'i, as you know, he was born in Gaza. He moved to Mecca, from Mecca to Medina, from Medina to Iraq, from Iraq to Egypt, and he died in Egypt in the year 205. Yeah. So, and the Imam Ahmad too was born in Baghdad. So he traveled almost in the Islamic cities at that time to record hadith. Okay. So these Imams, also Imam Abu Hanifa also was born in Kufa, but he also came to Medina several times. He also went to Mecca. In fact, the first hadith Imam Abu Hanifa reported or heard in his journey of seeking knowledge, he heard it in Mecca, not in Kufa. Yeah, he heard it in Kufa. So all these Imams, they've left their hometowns and cities to different cities to seek knowledge, except Imam Malik. So Imam Malik he started seeking knowledge in Medina, and then became a qualified jurist and muhaddith still in Medina. He has never traveled outside Medina. So he also studied from renowned scholars of his time, right? From renowned scholars of his time like Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab is one of the greatest scholars among the Tabi'un. Okay, he has narrated from many Sahabis, from Aisha radiallahu anha. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab, he narrated from Aisha radiallahu anha, the mother of the believers, and also narrated from Abu Huraira. He narrated from Umar ibn Khattab, right? And he's one of the scholar among the Tabi'un who knows the fatwa of Umar ibn Khattab. Yeah, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. So Imam Malik did not study from Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. He studied from the students of Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. The students. Why? Because Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab died in a year after the birth of Imam Malik. So,
92.
Yeah?
92.
No, 93.
93.
Sorry, he died in the year 94. Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. Yeah. And then Imam Malik was born in the year 93. So he studied from the students of Imam Sa'id ibn al-Musayyab. Okay, and also Imam Malik studied from Nafi'. Nafi' is a freed slave of Abdullah ibn Umar. So Abdullah ibn Umar is the son of Umar ibn Khattab, right? So he studied Imam Malik did not study from Abdullah ibn Umar. He studied from the servant and the students of Abdullah ibn Umar. His name is Nafi'.
the students at the same time servants.
Yeah. So that time, Nafi' was what? A slave of Abdullah ibn Umar, and he freed him. He freed him, and then he became so we say Mawla, Nafi' Mawla ibn Umar. So Nafi', the free slave of Ibn Umar, right? So after he freed him, he became his servant. So he served him till he died, right? So Nafi' served Abdullah ibn Umar till what? Till his death. So he reported many hadiths from Abdullah ibn Umar. Okay, he reported many hadiths from Abdullah ibn Umar. So Imam Malik studied from Nafi', the student, and also the freed slave of Abdullah ibn Umar. Okay. Alright. So when did Abdullah ibn Umar die? Yeah, he died in the year 68. Sorry, Abdullah ibn Umar died in the year 73. 73. And then Nafi', Mawla ibn Umar, died in the year 117. Okay, so Imam Malik also studied from what? From different scholars. And then there's also a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that some scholars of hadith think that it's the Prophet ﷺ was referring to Imam Malik. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيَأْتِيَنَّ عَلَى النَّاسِ زَمَانٍ يضربون أكباد الإبل يطلبون العلم ولا يجدون عالما أعلم من عالم المدينة. So a time will come, people will spread on the earth seeking for knowledge, and they will not find any scholar more knowledgeable than the scholar of Medina. Okay, so before we so this hadith, as you heard, the Prophet ﷺ was what? Informing the Sahabas about what? A scholar of Medina. Okay, so later scholars they've looked at this hadith. Whom was the Prophet ﷺ referring to in this particular hadith? Who is the scholar of Medina? Okay, so many scholars have given their opinion as whom the Prophet ﷺ was referring to. Okay, but when you look at the history of Medina, you can't find this description except on Imam Malik. Okay, so in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said a time will come, people will go out seeking for knowledge, right? And then they will not find any scholar more knowledgeable than the scholar of Medina. Okay, so at the time of Imam Malik, before the time of Imam Malik, there were many jurists, many scholars in Medina who lived in Medina, and then many scholars at that time, people were coming to them to study from different cities. Okay, but there was no scholar whom many people from all the regions of the Islamic regions at that time came to him to seek knowledge except Imam Malik. All the regions. People from Africa. Africa at that time was Tunisia. Okay, it's Tunisia. So not Ethiopia. Yeah, not Ethiopia. Ethiopia, just Habasha. Yeah, Habasha. So people who come from Africa, meaning Tunisia. People who come from Egypt, from Spain, and then other cities of other Islamic cities at that time to Imam Malik to ask for fatwa. They will come every year. They will come to Imam Malik. Some will come to Hajj. After Hajj, they will go to Imam Malik to ask for fatwa. Okay, and then some rulers, some governors, they will send a delegation to Imam Malik. Of course, they will come with many questions to ask Imam Malik. So when it's time for Hajj, they will gather all the issues that they can't find answers to. Then they will send it with a delegation. They will come to Imam Malik and then ask him all the questions. So Imam Malik, when when they ask him, and then what he will answer. If you don't know, he will say, I don't know. If you don't know, Imam Malik will say what? He will say, I don't know. Once people came from Andalus, from Spain, and they asked Imam Malik several questions, all right? And he was able to answer some few questions. And then the rest he told them he don't know. He don't know. And then they said, okay, if you don't know, then who knows? If you don't know, then who knows? Then they were insisting that, he must answer the question. And then he said, go and tell them that Imam Malik said he don't know. Go and tell them that Imam Malik said he don't know. So like that. So he's a very pious scholar. He's one of the scholars who don't feel arrogant or who don't feel big to say, I don't know. Okay, so people used to come to Imam Malik from all the cities of Islam. But there was no any scholar before the time of Malik in Medina that many people around the cities or across the cities of Islam used to come to him. All right, except Imam Malik. So many scholars like Abdullah ibn Mubarak, who died in the year 118, and also Sufyan al-Thawri, they are of the view that this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ meant by Imam Malik, right? So
the hadith, some or all of them said Imam Malik, or some to
no, some mention some scholars, okay, but some also mention Imam Malik, okay, yeah, it's not all, yeah. So Imam Tirmizi, he reported the hadith. He is also of the view that it's Imam Malik. Okay, so like that. So some scholars, it's not all the scholars, some scholars said the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was referring to Imam Malik. All right, so, and Imam Malik also, he started teaching, he became a qualified jurist when he was 21 years. Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah, and then before he started teaching, he consulted his scholars, his teachers, whether he's qualified to do that. And then 70 among his teachers approved what? They said that, yeah, you are qualified to teach, and then he started teaching. Yeah. So he didn't he did not just say, okay, I've gotten to a level that I have to start teaching. No, he consulted his teachers, and then 70 among his teachers said to him, yeah, you're qualified to teach, you're qualified to give fatwa. Yeah. So that's Imam Malik. I don't want us to prolong. So Imam Malik also, he died in the year 179. Yeah, so Imam Malik, he died in the year 179. Okay, now let's look at the sources of his madhab briefly. Okay, Imam Malik, there are about 17 sources of derivation in his madhab. So if you say 17 sources, meaning there are sources where when there's a religious issue, he looked at these sources and extrapolate and derive ruling from. Okay, so but of course we will not discuss all these sources. We discuss at 5 at most. Okay, so now the Quran and the Sunnah. Quran, the Sunnah, Ijma, Qiyas, and then also Amal Ahl al-Madina, and then Urf. Okay, and then Urf you have Sadd al-Zari'a, and then Maslahat al-Mursala. But we will discuss a few sources here, just to have idea if we say a madhab, what it means. Okay, so now before we start with the sources of Imam Malik, what is a madhab? Okay, what's a madhab? Okay, so a madhab, it's a conclusion of a scholar. That's a madhab. A conclusion of a scholar on what? On a legal issue. This is a madhab. So now, if we say madhab of Imam Malik, it's what? The conclusions of Imam Malik on what? On legal issues or creedal issues. So here, madhab of Imam Malik, it's what? It's a legal school of thought, right? It's a legal school. So conclusions of Imam Malik on what? On legal issues. So now when we are following the Malik school of thought, we are following the conclusions of Imam Malik, and then the methodology Imam Malik used in what? In reaching that conclusion. That's what we are following. So we are not actually following Imam Malik himself, no. Because his conclusions are based on what? Based on his understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah and other sources. Okay, so we are following what? The understanding or the conclusion of Imam Malik on what? On certain verses and certain ahadith and other sources as well. And then we are also following Imam Malik on what? On his methodology. How did Imam Malik reach this conclusion on this particular issue? So the methodology that he used, we are also what? Following that methodology. So if there is an issue, we will look at the Quran and the Sunnah. Of course, the scholars will look at the Quran and the Sunnah and then apply the same what? Methodology Imam Malik what? Used. Right? And then that will lead them to what? To some of what? The conclusions, close to what? The conclusion of Imam Malik. So this is what this is a mazhab. So mazhab is not what? Just blindly following Imam. No. As many people think. They say, okay, if it's a madhab, why should I follow a madhab? They will say, I follow the Quran and the Sunnah. I don't have to follow madhab. Right? You hear people saying this. I don't follow madhab. I follow the kitab and then the Sunnah. Okay, so if you hear this as if the Imams don't follow kitab and the Sunnah. Right? Okay. So before we start, all the Imams, they've memorized the glorious Quran. All the Imams. As we mentioned, Imam Malik memorized the Quran when he was what? When he was young. Imam Abu Hanifa, he has memorized the Quran before he started even learning Arabic language. Yes. So Imam Shafi'i went to the same. And Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. So these four Imams, they've memorized the Quran by heart. They've committed the Quran in in their heart. They've secured it. Okay. Also, when it comes to hadith, all of the Imams, these four Imams, they have hadith compilation. They have hadith book that they've written themselves. Right? Imam Abu Hanifa has a hadith book called Musnad Abi Hanifa. Imam Malik has a hadith compilation called Muwatta al-Muwatta. Imam al-Shafi'i has he has memorized the Muwatta of Malik. He has memorized the complete the Muwatta of Malik and then narrated it in one of his books called And then Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he has a hadith compilation. His corpus, hadith corpus, is the biggest hadith book we have.
That's
Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal. He has memorized more than 1 million hadith. Okay, so why am I mentioning all this to you? Why am I mentioning all this? For you to understand that these Imams, they are not ignorant of the Quran and the Sunnah. They've memorized the Quran and then the Sunnah itself. So they know the Quran and they know the Sunnah. You understand? And then they understand it from what? From the original sources, from the original text. Okay? So it's not like we just follow like these Imams who don't follow the Quran and then the Sunnah. As many will say, I'm following the Quran and what? And the Sunnah. As if the Imams don't follow the Quran and the Sunnah. So I mention all this for you to know that here the Imams, they are well grounded when it comes to these two sources. So Imam Malik, So we said that Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, Qiyas, and then Uruf, and then also Amal Ahl al-Madina is also some of what the sources of Imam Malik. So if we say sources, what do we mean? We mean that the sources are like when there is a legal issue, okay, that we want the Islamic ruling, we want what the Islamic ruling of this on this issue. So where do we get the ruling of what of this issue? That's the source. Where we derive, where we extrapolate this ruling is what is the source. So the first source is the Quran. And before that we have two primary sources, two main sources, two primary sources, that's the Kitab and the Sunnah. So they are main sources because they are independent. These two sources don't depend on any other sources. But the other sources, like the Ijma, the Qiyas, the Uruf, Amal Ahl al-Madina, they all depend on what? These two sources. Okay, so the Quran, how is the Quran a source of law? So we see, we follow the Kitab and the Sunnah, and the Kitab and the Sunnah are the primary sources. So how is the Quran a source of law? Okay, this is a very important question. Now, if you remember very well, in our Aqidah lesson, we discussed that Allah has blessed us with what? With reasoning. And then this reasoning is a very powerful tool, right? And then we can use this reasoning to reach many, to conclude on many things, right? To reach many, form or type of knowledge, okay? And then the far this reasoning can reach us is what? To know that there's a creator, there's Allah. Do you remember we discussed this? Yeah. So this reasoning we can sit and think and look at the sophistication of the creation of the heavens and the earth, the universe, the sea, the ocean, the tree and everything. Look at human beings. All these are what created things, right? Who created it? How did it come? Right? So we can reach the conclusion that all these did not just come by chance. Someone created it. So who is that someone? That's the being we call what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. So now that's the far our reasoning can take us to. But so what is the qualities? What are the attributes of this creator? Why did this creator create all these things? And why did he create us? Why are we here? All these are questions that our reasoning cannot answer. So in order to get the response or the answers to this, we need what? We need a revelation. Alright? So these, and then from the revelation we understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually created us to what? To worship him. So now, how do we worship this creator? Our reasoning cannot also what? Cannot take us. So we cannot conclude on it. So we also need what? A revelation. How do we worship the God, the creator who has created us to worship him? How do we worship him? We need another revelation. How to worship him? What does this creator want? We need a revelation. What should we stay away from? What should we refrain from? We need a revelation. Okay, so that's the Quran. Allah sent the Prophet and then revealed to him what he wants us to do and what he don't want us to do. So that's the legal issues. Do and then don't. So we find all these in the glorious Quran. So what we should do, Allah has mentioned it in the glorious Quran. That we should pray, we have it in the Quran. Right? We should worship him alone, we have it in the Quran. We should fast, we have it in the Quran. Right? So all is what these are the sources of what? Of law. I hope you're getting it. Okay, any question? Alright. So now, so can we say we are done with the Quran as a source? Is everything clear? Okay, now, the Quran too, Allah did not just send it from what? From the heavens to the earth. It's what? He revealed to what? To someone called a prophet. That prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so in the Quran, Allah has what? Established in the Quran that his followers, the Muslims, should what? Should follow the guidance of what? Of the messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah said, "Man yuta rasula faqad ata Allah." Whoever obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah. Meaning, whoever disobeys the messenger has what? Disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah also said, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوا وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا. Whatever the prophet gives you or brings to you, accept it. And whatever he prohibits you, stay away from it. Okay? Alright. And then Allah also said, we've revealed the book to you so that you may teach them or explain it to them so that they may reflect. So all these verses establish what? Establish the authority of the prophet, that Allah has revealed to him, and we have to what? Obey him, and he has to also what? Explain to us. Right? So now, how do we obey the prophet? How do we obey the prophet? We obey the prophet by what? By following his sunnah. We obey the prophet by following his sunnah. So now, can you say that you obey the prophet without following his sunnah? Can you? So how do you even obey or follow the prophet without following his sunnah? You get it? So it doesn't work. And then also, you can also understand the Quran without following what the sunnah of the prophet. Right? And then to claim that, so now there are people, a movement, they believe that they can understand Islam through the Quran alone. They don't need the sunnah. They don't need the sunnah. Right? But this is a contradiction to the Quran itself, and also disobedient to the Quran itself. Right? So Allah said, "Man yuta rasula faqad ata Allah." Whoever obeys the prophet has obeyed Allah. Right? So obedience to the prophet is what? To follow his guidance and follow his sunnah. Right? And you said that no, I can understand the religion through what? Through the Quran alone. This is what? Disobedience to the Quran itself. Because the Quran commands you to what? To follow the Prophet ﷺ. Alright? So here we establish that the authority of the Prophet ﷺ to what? As a guide, as a teacher. We have to what? We have to follow him, and following him means to follow his sunnah. Alright? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to pray. How do we pray? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not what? Describe how we should pray, but he has left that to what? To the Prophet, to teach us how to pray. We should fast. The commandment is in the Quran, right? But how do we fast? What time do we fast? From what time to what? What time? Of the obligatory fasting, in which month do we fast? Do we fast in Shawwal? Do we fast in Dhul Hijjah? Do we fast in Muharram? The Quran has mentioned it. But how do we fast? From what time to what time? How many days? Right? So now the Quran has explained. We should give zakah. The Quran has what? The Quran has commanded, but the Prophet what? The Prophet has explained and acted upon it. So we follow his actions and what? His commandment and then his teachings. So the Sunnah is also what? It's also a source of law, and what? An independent source. Right? So these does not what? These two sources are independent. They don't depend on what? On other sources. But the other sources of law, they depend on what? They depend on the Quran and the Sunnah, right? So the third one is what is ijma. That's the consensus of what? Of scholars. So here it means that when scholars of a certain time era agree on something, right? They agree on something, on a legal issue, it becomes what? It becomes binding on what? On the Muslims. When scholars agree on something, right? It becomes what? It becomes binding on what? On the Muslim community. Okay.
So, could it be that maybe the time that they agreed on that one, maybe it was based on the situation,
Mm-hmm.
and it happened that another generation has come and the situation that doesn't match. Can you still use that wording to?
So here, it's based on a certain situation. They agreed on based on what? Based on the situation in their time, right, or the circumstance. So when the circumstance change, the scholar of that era has to also what? Exert. They have to also search and then exercise their understanding and do ijtihad to come up with with a legal ruling, right? So when the circumstance change, then the scholars of that time have to also do ijtihad to conclude on something, right? So they are not binding on that issue. Okay. Yeah. So that's ijma. And then the time of the Sahabas, there were many things that they agreed upon that scholars or Muslims after the time of Sahabas don't have to what it is. It is a sin to go contrary to these consensus. Yeah.
It's a sin.
It's a sin. Right. Why? Why is it a sin? Because scholars don't agree on something. To say ijma, have consensus on something that is contrary to the teaching of the Quran and the Sunnah. All that they agree upon is what? On conformity. It's what? In conformity with what? With the Quran, the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. Right? So for instance, the Sahabas, they agreed that they agreed on what the compilation of the Quran as a book. This is what disagreement. This is a consensus. Right? And then also, in the time of the Prophet, the adhan on Friday, or Yom al-Jum'ah, it's only one adhan. And in the time of Abu Bakr, in the time of Omar, but in the time of Uthman introduced the second adhan. Sorry, the first adhan. The second adhan was there in the time of the Prophet, but the first adhan was introduced by Uthman, right?
The second one.
Yeah, the first adhan.
You come up is two.
Yeah, we have two adhans on Friday. The first one and the second one. The first one was introduced by the first one was introduced by Uthman. The second one, which one is the first one? Which one is the second one? The first one is when it's almost time for Jum'ah, the Muazzin called for prayer. This is the first one. Introduced by Uthman to remind people that it's almost time for what? For prayer. That's when the Islamic State expanded, right? When the Prophet was there, there was no need for that. So they sufficed with what? With only one adhan. So in the time of Uthman, the Islamic State expanded and Muslim became what? Many. So he introduced the first adhan to remind people that it's what? It's almost time for prayer. So when the Imam also sits before the khutbah, the second adhan is what was there in the time of the Prophet. So when Uthman introduced the first adhan, the Sahabas agreed on that. So it became what? Ijma. So you can't come today and say that you searched in the Sunnah and you can't find it. You understand? So you can't what? Going contrary to this ijma is what? Is sin. You get it? Because scholars among Sahabas agreed on this.
So none of them didn't disagree?
No, they did not disagree.
But what if it happens that maybe it's late and you don't do it? It's not a sin. Maybe, like the agreement, if you go contrary to it, it becomes a sin.
Yeah.
But what if it happens that, for instance, in our school, we can't call the first adhan there, come and call the second adhan the Imam is. So we just wait, everybody knows the time. They come to the mosque, the Imam sits, then they call the adhan and pray. What about that one? Is it, since it's also contrary?
Yeah, that one, it's based on what situation, okay? So you are in school, you can't call, the first adhan and the second. So, which school are you referring, which circumstance? But here, if you find yourself in a circumstance that you can't call the two adhan, it's fine, based on what your circumstance, it's not a problem. But to deliberately see that because I can't find it in the Quran and the Sunnah, therefore, I'm not going to act upon it. This is sinful, right? But if the circumstances don't permit you, then there's no problem. You understand? Then there's no problem. I hope it's clear. Okay, now let's look at qiyas. Qiyas is what? Analogy. Okay, scholarly reasoning. Okay, so analogy is it's an issue. Let's say there are certain issues. It's not all, you have to understand that it's not all the legal issues we know today that its ruling is mentioned in the Quran. Okay, there are certain legal issues that you can't find the ruling neither in the Quran nor in the Sunnah. Okay, so here we need what? We need ijtihad or we need qiyas. So qiyas, now there are certain issues, there are certain legal issues that we know the reason and the wisdom why it was enacted or it was prohibited. So based on the reasoning, there are certain issues too that we can't find the ruling in the Quran. So if the wisdom or the cause, the wisdom or the cause or the reason of it correspond, then it will have the same ruling. For example, Allah has mentioned the ruling of what? Consuming alcohol, right? Right? Alcohol consumption is what? Is haram. Oh? Okay. إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأذلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه. So that's what? Stay away from what? From alcohol and then gambling and also other impurities. So this what? This is haram, right? So taking alcohol or consuming alcohol is what? Is haram. So why was alcohol prohibited? It was prohibited because it intoxicates the mind or the brain or the reasoning, right? So when you take alcohol, you get intoxicated, and it affects the way you think, the reasoning. Okay, so it was prohibited because of this. Okay, so now there are certain drugs today that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not mentioned in the Quran. You can also find in the Sunnah. Okay, so you can't say that, oh, I've searched in the Quran, I've searched in the Sunnah, I can't find any drug of such caliber, so taking this drug is what? Is halal. No. Then we ask you, when you take that drug, do you get intoxicated? If you say yes, then we say, okay, it will have the same ruling as what? As alcohol. This is qiyas. You get it? So there are issues like that. So this is also another source of what? Another source of law. So issue of I've searched in the Quran, I've searched in the Sunnah, I've did this, I've done that, and I can't find any ruling of it. This is an ignorant approach. Scholar this, okay? Yeah, Quran and the Sunnah are the two main sources, but that's not the only sources. You get it? Okay. And then we also have Amal Ahl al-Madina. We also have Urf, and then other sources of law. But I don't want us to prolong on this. But let's look at Urf, tradition and custom. This is also what another source of law. Okay. So now, how is Urf a source of law? Urf is a source of law. The tradition that we know, our tradition, our custom as people, is a source of law, right? Like when it comes to several issues, when it comes to feeding, let's say, it's the responsibility of the husband to spend on his family, right? His wife and his children, right? This was the Quran has mentioned this and the Sunnah as well. But the Sunnah and the Quran did not mention how much should he spend on the family. So now, how do we know how much should a husband spend? First of all, it's based on his financial capacity, and also our tradition. Okay. All right. So that's it. So issues like, let's pause for it to finish. Okay, so we were talking about the Urf, right? Okay, we said that the Quran and the Sunnah have mentioned the obligation of, the responsibility of the husband, right, towards his family, and that what he should spend on his family. But how much exactly, the Quran and the Sunnah have not mentioned. Okay, so how do we specify? So it's the tradition and the custom that specify how much he should spend. All right. So issues also like the house chores, like who should do the house chores. Today, especially, you hear many people arguing on that, right? People saying, I can't find this in the Quran and the Sunnah. It's not the responsibility of the wife to wash, to clean, and do all that. Why? Because Allah did not mention, and the Prophet did not also mention in the Quran. Okay. So now, how do we know that? Whose responsibility is that? This is what determined by the custom, by the tradition. Okay, so now we ask the grandfathers, all right, the grandfathers and the grandmothers the house chores, who used to do it? Is it the grandfathers or the grandmothers? Is it the grandmothers or the grandfathers?
The grandmothers.
The grandmothers. Okay, so and then it continues like that, from generation to generation, right? It's the house chores, the grandmothers does it, and also the washing and the cleaning and all the cooking and everything is the grandmothers. That so it's what here we understand by tradition, by custom, is what is the responsibility of the wives to do that, right? So you don't go to the Quran and say, I'm looking for the ruling of on this issue from the Quran and the Sunnah. No, such issues and related issue we refer to the tradition and the custom, right? So it's also a source of law in this madhab. We also have other sources of law. So we will pause here, and then inshallah next week we start reading the book, inshallah. Is there any question? Okay, what?
Okay. With regards to the Urf, the tradition, is the society, or let's say the environment, also has a play in that. You see, in India, the man doesn't marry the woman.
Yeah.
It's the woman that marries the man. So it's what's the
What's the okay? So the urf is not global urf. We are not talking about global tradition here, right? So every society they will go what according to what to their society there, the norm, the tradition of what of their society and community. You know, you don't, if you are in Ghana, let's say, you know what, you don't, I mean, consider the tradition or the norm in what in India or in South Africa, right? So you restrict what this norm to what is known in what in your society, in your country. Okay, so here, yes, in India, some part of India, of course, not everywhere, the women marry the men. Okay, yeah. So I mean, in India, they have many things like that, you know. Even when the husband die, yeah, when the husband dies, sometimes the women will just be there. Some they have to marry an animal or a tree, yeah, to free the soul of their husbands, yeah. So many things. So while we are not this, we are not binding. This this not type of the type of urf we are talking about, and this way to yeah, this is not the one. This is not the type of tradition that we were talking about, right? Okay.
Okay.
And
Based on the urf, maybe as you just asked, maybe if maybe we go to somewhere, maybe your grandfather is the one washing.
yeah, so that's what is known there. Is the grandfathers who will be washing. So based on that will be their this thing. But here we also have to understand, yeah, even though the tradition and the norm and the custom is what is a source of law, but you should not go in. I mean, you should not contradict any teaching from the Quran and the Sunnah. Right. As far as this norm, this tradition does not contradict anything from the Quran and the Sunnah, then it will be considered as what? As good norm or good tradition. Then we can base certain rulings on it. Yeah, understand. Okay. Any other question? All right, let's pause here.